And then coming back to authors, it's a huge question, but who do you think has most influenced you, two or three?
I couldn't begin to deal with that. I'm brought up on Homer from about age 5, if not a little earlier. Homer is made daily bread to me by my father. I still regard certain things in Homer as finally unsurpassed. I will give an example because I'm lecturing on that very point in Venice in October. In the last book of the Iliad, book 24, King Priam comes to beg for the body of his slain son Hector from man killing Achilles. I know of no other text in any literature which reaches one or two of the summits of that text. For instance, a line in which the old man puts his lips on the man-slaughtering hands of Achilles, the hands that have killed his son. But then comes the utter climax. They weep. Achilles weeps for his old father, Peleus, P-E-L-E-U-S, and because Achilles knows he will soon die himself in battle. Priam weeps because he knows his city of Troy will be razed to the ground and burned to ash with all his 50 sons. And in that moment, Achilles quietly turns to Priam and says, now we have to eat, whatever our grief. Neither Shakespeare, nor the Bible, nor Dante has ever, in my opinion, dared that line. And the only one who could have coped with it would have been Tolstoy, who took it from Homer, who is steeped in Homer. Think of that line. The example that Achilles gives very quietly is another mythological figure, Niobe, N-I-O-B-E, whose 10 children were killed in a vengeance by Apollo and Diana, and then the line is very simple, she fell to her food. That's the best translation we have, to try and make it very concrete. There's no cynicism in that line. There is no false modernist objectivity. There's a kind of transcendent understanding of life, of what human life is in the final analysis, which I think no other text quite matches. Or moments in the Odyssey, which I spent my whole life working on and dealing with. I then, of course, turn to Shakespeare, as everyone does, who accompanies my everyday. But in the last analysis, I know why Eliot prefers Dante to Shakespeare. This has nothing to do with comparative merit. That would be idiotic. It is that Dante's philosophic, intellectual grandeur, his passion for the life of the mind, his sense of how ideas work and how ideas become animate forces far transcends that of Shakespeare, who's not concerned with that aspect of life, who does not deal with philosophic doctrine and dogma. There are those who say, thank God, and that makes him the universal. Maybe, but I can't do at any point without Dante, and without the belief that finally the greatest poetry and the greatest intellectual understanding go together.
When you were talking about the depth of understanding of humans in Homer, I was thinking of King Lear on the heath. You know,
But, sorry, I have real trouble with that one. I have trouble, first of all, with the leap off Dover Cliff. At what level of absurdity are we meant to take that? The parody scenes in the hut with the fool are fantastic, surrealistic. They are a kind of metaphysical circus like no one else has achieved. I cannot identify with them at any point. I can completely with Achilles' Let's Have Dinner. I can completely with the dog Argo, A-R-G-O, after waiting 20 years, raises his head when Odysseus comes back to the palace, lets his head be stroked and dies in that moment. He has waited for him. He has recognized him. There are 1,000 points in Homer which invite me to be more human. The Shakespearean case is much more complicated. There's another very curious point, and that's my French education. I plead guilty. You can cut vast chunks of Shakespeare. Everybody does. We haven't seen a complete production of Hamlet in about 30, 40 years, and it was done in this country only because the Russians, with pedagogic completeness, have not cut a single line out of their Hamlet. It's almost 5 hours. You can cut big chunks, and it's still transcendently marvelous. Don't try and cut a single line out of Dante or Racine or Homer. I was brought up in a classical aesthetic where totality of willed creation counts enormously. Shakespeare is a script writer. There's never been another on the face of the earth. Today he would write television scripts with delight and with virtuoso genius at every point, recreating the medium as he went along. But they are scripts, not the sonnets, which everybody likes to talk about and nobody reads. Not the sonnets, of course, but the plays are in motion. They are open-ended scripts. They are subject to production, direction, social context, not certain of these other classics, which in my French lycée education were the ideal criterion.